And first of all, I'd just like to start this by saying if it had not been for Pastor Danny and Pastor Jill, I wouldn't be here today for God allowing our paths to cross over 18 years ago. I just want to honor them today. Come on, give them a hand clap for sowing. But as Pastor Danny mentioned, it was about 18 years ago, and I'm just going to free flow with this today. But about 10 years ago, I found myself just in a place where I just come off of a church staff and kind of just going through a season of burnout and questioning my calling. God, did you call me to be in ministry? Did you call me to be a pastor? Did you call me to speak your word into the lives of people? And I think a lot of it had to do with my own mindset as well. I mean, sometimes we've got to own up to our responsibilities, to allow God to come in and do a work on the inside of us. And I felt hurt, I felt rejection, and all these plethora of emotions going on the inside of me. And I was still trying to continue on with ministry outside of the local church. I was traveling around just a little bit ministering, but still feeling empty on the inside. And whatever mindsets I've gathered, I believe those begin to slow me down as well. I mean, something was wrong with this pastor's vision if I begin to think church was a bad place. Come on now. And so God had to really teach me a lesson. And not only that, I found myself as a single evangelist going out and questioning, God, will I ever get married? And dealing with the junk and the emotional funk that, I remember when I was just a teenage boy, my father spoke some very damaging words over my life, and that stayed with me, and I didn't even know this was the thing that was causing the relational dysfunction. But he said, son, whatever you do, don't ever get married and don't ever have children. And weeks later, he left our family. So I'm carrying all this around as a pastor, as a young minister, and I found myself once again on the road trying to evangelize. And God really taught me an awesome lesson. I was out one morning jogging in the neighborhood right outside my apartment complex, and I'd go jogging every morning to try to clear my head and try to somehow communicate with God. And as I was jogging and I was on my way back to the apartment complex, I came around and there was a huge park, state park, where I'd go jogging. And I noticed there was about 5 big yellow school buses that were unloading all these elementary school kids. And they came down and they began to set in these bleachers. And after that, I kind of felt like God spoke to me and said, Adonis, you need to stick around and see what's going on. I mean, when God speaks to you, you need to obey it. And so I stayed there, and all of a sudden I noticed these huge, about 5 or 6 SUVs, these black Suburbans come pulling in, and they unload all of these huge crates from those SUVs, and they set them up. And a few minutes after that, I realized what's going on. It's actually a field trip, and they have all these birds from the bird sanctuary on display. And so the lead guy gets out, and he's actually the keeper of all these birds, and he begins to put all these birds on display. And I'm going to make a long story short here, but it's going to be powerful. It'll impact your life. And the last bird that they had on display was this huge cage they brought out and set it center stage. And he opened up the door, and out hopped one of the largest bald eagles that I've ever seen in my life. And he hopped out of that cage and he stood on the platform. He had a chain around his leg so that he didn't run off. And they put him on this platform, and his name was Sammy. And they began to talk about Sammy. And as Sammy stood there and he stretched his wings wide, he had about an 8-foot wingspan. As he stretched them wide, and what he was actually doing, the keeper told us, he said, right now, Sammy is stretching forth his wings, and we all noticed one of his wings was clipped and broken. And right there, he said, now I'm going to tell you the story of what happened to Sammy. Because we all look at bald eagles, and we know they are made to fly the friendly skies, to soar above the circumstances and the storms. And yet this eagle's wings was clipped. And he told us, he said, Sammy made a bad decision one day. How many ever been there? And he did something that eagles don't normally do. He said Sammy was flying the friendly skies one day, and he looked down and he saw roadkill in the middle of the road. And he said eagles normally feed off of live animals. And Sammy's bad decision to fly down and feast off of roadkill, because he didn't know a car was coming around the corner, and clipped him and broke his wing. Long story short, the animal rescue mission was called, and they came and found Sammy, and now he's in the hands of his keeper. But his keeper said, don't feel bad for Sammy because right now the reason he has his wings open wide is because he's drawing from the sun the vitamins that he needs to bring restoration back to his body. And it wasn't the S-O-N, it was the S-U-N, but I'm telling you today we can draw from the sun, Jesus Christ, to receive the restoration that we need in our lives. And as Sammy stood there with both wings stretched wide, this keeper begins to go on. And God kind of really told me, Adonis, that bird and you've got a lot in common. Because right now you're in a season where you feel like you've been damaged and you can no longer do what I've called you to do. You feel like there's been some major setbacks in your life and you'll never accomplish the dream that's on the inside of you. Now I had a decision to make. I can sit there and feel sorry for myself, or I can listen to what God was trying to teach me. As that keeper began to go on and on about Sammy, and I'm there looking at this bird and I'm beginning to feel sorry for this bird. I said, Lord, he can't even fly the friendly skies anymore. He can't even fend for himself and gather his food. And God said, Adonis, just shut up and listen to what the keeper has to say. So I listened to the keeper. And the keeper began to tell us stories of how eagles renew their strength. And he said, as eagles live their life, they go on and through storms and weathering the storms and debris that's in the wind, said they gather tons of junk and debris within their feathers that weigh them down. And I begin to look at my life. My thought processes begin to weigh me down. Come on. My bad attitude about church began to get caught up on the inside of me. And it began to weigh me down, all the junk and funk of my own emotions. Come on, somebody. Begin to clutter our lives. It says eagles reach a point where they can't even fly the altitude that they used to could fly. And not only that, he says the older they get and they go on in life because they've weathered the storms, their vision is interrupted by a cloudy film that tries to take away their eagle-like vision. And a film actually develops over their eyes and they can't see as clearly as they used to could see. And I begin to think about that because I can no longer see the vision that God had for me as clear as I used to could see it. How many ever been there? It gets a little foggy and you wonder, will you ever reach the goal, ever reach the destiny? Maybe because of things that have happened in the past that have tried to cloud your vision. I said, God, obviously you read my mail. Now what? He said, Adonis, listen to the keeper. So I continued to listen to the keeper. He said, but you know what? When eagles reach that place, this is what they begin to do to start the restoration process in their life. He said, nobody has to prod them. Nobody has to tell them. Nobody has to come and talk to them in eagle conversation to get them to do this. He said, but by instinct, when they're sick and tired of being weighted down by circumstances, when they're sick and tired of no longer seeing as clearly as they could see, by instinct, they mount up close to the sun. And they begin to flap their wings and push past all the heaviness in desperation to get close to the sun. And the keeper said the closer they get to the sun, they go to a distance where no other bird can go. And they get so close that the rays from the sun begin to burn off all the debris. Come on. All the things that have clouded them, all the things that have weighed them down. And I'm telling you today, I had to make a decision. This pastor had to make a decision to step into this church. And this church brought me closer to the sun. And it doesn't stop there. They said all the debris, the junk and the funk of past and things that have been collected in them burns off, but they keep pushing just a little further. Everybody say a little further. Come on, all of our campuses, a little further. They push a little further because they're not fully restored yet. Because their vision hasn't been restored. And if your vision's not restored, you'll end back up in the same predicament. Come on. They push a little further. And they get another distance closer to the sun, to where the sun rays begins to burn off all the fogginess that has clouded their vision. I'm here to tell you today, the moment I stepped into this house, I felt God's presence. The moment I stepped in, the weight of the past began to fall off. How many of you glad that your past can't stay with you? Come on. The weight of the past began to fall off. I got a brand new vision. My vision was restored, and I began to see myself as God saw me years ago. Come on, somebody. The restored Adonis. But I'm back at that park, and I'm still arguing with God, and I'm getting ready to close here. My first closing. I said, God, all that's good, and I feel like you've taught me a lesson. I said, God, but here's the deal. The truth of it is that eagle, God, is still in a bad place. His wing is broken. I'm arguing with God. I'm trying to teach God a lesson now. Because, God, you're trying to paint a perfect picture for me, but that eagle, his wing is still broken. And God is really suggesting to me that he can no longer fly and find food, and he can't do that anymore. And so God said, Adonis, listen to the keeper. And the keeper began to say, although this eagle can't fly anymore, he said, I provide 3 healthy, hearty meals a day for this eagle. He'll never have to go out and hunt anymore for his own food. And I begin to say, wow, okay, God, you got me on that one, but God, I got you on this one. I said, God, but he'll never soar the heights that he used to soar. He'll always be bound by this chain and his keeper, and he'll never fly the friendly skies again. And the moment that came out of my breath, me arguing with God, the moment those words came out of my mouth, a helicopter came around the corner and landed in that open field that we were at. And the keeper picked up the bird and looked at the children and said, this concludes our field trip for today. And Sammy has 5 other speaking engagements, and we're going to fly him in this helicopter. How many know God is able? I said, God is able to do more than you ever thought he could do in your life. Come on, somebody give God a praise in the house.